Haruto is a seemingly ordinary high school student who lives in modern-day Japan, but behind his solemn look hides a very painful secret. Several years ago, a game named Union was announced in all of Japan, but only a select number of people could play it. Haruto was one of them. Despite being in grade school at the time, he turned out to have a knack for the game and slowly started becoming really good at it. While playing, he also ended up meeting a bunch of other players who were also in grade school, and soon they became very good friends. While playing in the same party, they slowly start getting used to teamwork, and their efficiency skyrockets. They became one of the best, if not the best, teams to ever exist, and they named their team Subaru. Haruto became the leader of the group and along with other members was very confident in his team and his abilities. They started taking the most difficult quests that no other group was able to take, and yet they were able to clear them extremely easily. This was partly because of a girl in their group named Asahi. She had a special skill through which she could see a few moments into the future, and alongside Haruto, who was a fighter, she was able to synergize perfectly and help Haruto clear waves of enemies by predicting their next moves. The group also has a girl named Satsuki, who has a crush on Haruto and suspects that Haruto is in love with Asahi. One day, while sitting inside their hideout, they get to know about a dungeon that has never been conquered before, and people say that no one can ever survive it. Haruto is a very cocky person at this point because of his constant victories, and he replies that they can very easily conquer whichever dungeon they want to conquer and hypes up his teammates to help him conquer it. Some of his teammates seem a bit reluctant, but they join him nonetheless, and they set up a date for exploring the dungeon. The day finally arrives, and all of them go inside the dungeon, and everything seems to be going all right. Any monsters that they encounter on the way turn out to be pretty weak compared to them, and they are able to deactivate all of the traps thanks to the abilities of Asahi. They enter a room, and it turns out to be the final boss's chamber. A giant monster in steel armor emerges from the darkness and prepares for a duel. Asahi screams at her team, telling them where the attacks are coming from. Haruto is able to dodge the first attack thanks to her, and keeps moving forward alongside Taka, his second in command, who uses his special abilities to turn the sword of the monster into sand. Surprisingly, the monster has regenerative abilities and is able to pull a new sword out of his ass, I guess. Haruto tells Nozomi the sorcerer to summon a bird to attack the monster from above, while Clive uses his special abilities to turn the armor of the enemy into lead, slowing him down. Haruto decides to rush up towards the monster to attack him while he is slow, even though Taka told him not to rush. The monster quickly uses the flying swords around him and throws them at Nozomi. Haruto is forced to quickly change directions and runs to save Nozomi from the oncoming swords. He is able to block all of them, but one hits him from behind and he falls forward. The monster takes advantage of it and uses his energy beam to attack Haruto, who doesn't have enough time to dodge. Shockingly for everyone, Asahi jumps in between and sacrifices herself to protect Haruto, dying in the process. Everyone grieves as once a player dies in the game, they cannot ever rejoin it. They all sadly log out of the game and try contacting Asahi, but it turns out that when she died in game, she ended up having a heart attack and died in real life as well. The entire group is completely heartbroken, and they end up putting all the blame on Haruto for forcing them to join him for the adventure and then rushing towards the monster without any plan. Haruto becomes an emo boy after that and keeps to himself. Several years have passed and Haruto is now in high school. The summer vacations have just begun, but he keeps getting calls from one of his classmates, who begs him to join them for a game because they need 3 players but only have 2. Haruto refuses bluntly because he doesn't want to ever think about the game that took everything from him. He goes down to have breakfast and watches the news, which underlines that the very famous game called Union has gotten a reboot and is now being relaunched as Reunion. It is free to play, but only a select few individuals who have the natural game sense to play it will be able to access it. He goes back to his room but keeps getting hounded by his classmates about the game and finally ends up giving in and logging into Reunion. He arrives in the world and claims that not a lot seems to have changed, but it looks very different. While wandering around, he is greeted by 2 idiot classmates of his, a guy and a girl. They tell them that they want to explore a dungeon, but it is a very low-level dungeon, so no one wants to go with them. Haruto decides to go with them this time and starts exploring the dungeons. The idiots seem to be very big newbies to the game and are scared of anything and everything that comes their way. While walking, a bunch of monsters fly towards them, and the idiots simply crouch down and cry for their mothers. But thankfully, Haruto is able to kill both the monsters and save them. They all move forward and suddenly their surroundings completely change and they enter a room. Inside the room, they find a big chest lying on the floor, and the idiots tell Haruto to go and open the chest while they stand far away from it. Haruto goes ahead and opens the chest, and a bright light fills the room. When his eyes adjust to the light, he is utterly shocked to see a grown-up Asahi laying inside the chest, who wakes up and looks up at Haruto, still remembering who he is. Haruto is totally dumbfounded after seeing Asahi and is even more disturbed by the fact that Asahi is behaving as if nothing ever happened. At first, he thinks she's an imposter, and he takes her out of the dungeon to talk to her. She talks to him very happily, but she senses that Haruto has changed and asks what happened. Haruto is very hesitant to reveal what actually happened and starts interrogating her. He asks her about the current year, and she replies by giving the year when she died in the game 6 years ago. Haruto informs her that 6 years have passed since that, and she still believes that he is trying to mess with her, and she laughs it off. Haruto finally cannot take it anymore. He tells her about her death 6 years ago. She looks at him very seriously, tells him that he shouldn't make jokes like that, and starts talking about something else. Haruto, however, tells her to check whether she can look out from the game, and she tries it, only to see that she cannot look out from the game, which starts troubling her, as Haruto shows that he can easily log out from the game if he wants to. She asks him about the whereabouts of the rest of the gang, but Haruto replies that he hasn't talked to them in 6 years, and has no idea where they might be or whether they even play the game or not. This news saddens Asahi as she cannot understand how such a tightly knit group as theirs could fall apart. Before she could speak again, however, a bunch of men surround them from both sides, and a completely jacked guy walks in front of them and remarks that he always thought that Asahi died 6 years ago, but how they turned out to be rumors. Haruto doesn't remember this guy in the least. He, however, seems to know Haruto from the old days. Even Asahi seems to remember the muscle-brained guy and tries to remind Haruto that even when they used to play together, this guy would always try to sabotage them as he wanted Asahi on their team. He tells Leon to back off as he is trying to figure things out, but Leon gets pissed and punches a boulder, breaking it into 1,000 pieces, before he rushes forward at an incredibly high speed and punches Haruto in the stomach, which makes him double down on the floor. Leon himself seems surprised and laughs at Haruto, asking whether he has lost his sense of humor completely. Haruto gets up and brings out his sword, ready to battle, but before he could do anything, Leon punches again. But Asahi shouts from behind that it is a fake punch and he is going for a head kick. Haruto hears it in just the nick of time and is able to dodge Leon's attack, and Asahi provides cover fire, forcing Leon to back off. He regains his balance and starts threatening them again, claiming that he will beat the crap out of them and force them out of the game if they don't immediately join his guild and apologize to him. He starts walking towards Haruto, but stops midway after hearing a voice behind him. It turns out to be Taka, who has started playing again, and he is now in one of the strongest clans known as the Illuminati. He creates a bunch of clones of himself and tells Leon to back off, otherwise he will embarrassingly make him back off. Leon doesn't listen to the threat and rushes forward with a punch, but Taka easily dodges it and grabs his face before using his special ability, which tears all of his clothes into shreds, and he runs away out of embarrassment like a little bitch baby. He walks up to Haruto and asks him whether he lost his sense, to which Haruto replies, maybe. He looks at Asahi and smiles before saying that he missed her. He and Asahi talk a bit more, and Taka asks Asahi to join him, and Asahi immediately agrees eagerly, saying that all three of them can start a guild again, but Taka becomes tense at this statement and informs her that only she can join him, and he will never work with Haruto. Haruto simply looks down, while Taka berates him a bit more before telling Asahi to not help him as he is a self-centered piece of garbage. Asahi shuts him up and tells him that she doesn't want to go with him anymore because he is being so mean, and Takamura takes his leave, telling Asahi that his gates are open for her and she only needs to call him if she ever wants help. Haruto logs out of the system and lays down on the bed, thinking about everything that has happened till now, when he hears a knock at his door and his sister calls him down. He opens the door to find none other than Satsuki, who seems to have grown a lot, especially at certain places. She greets him awkwardly and asks if she can talk to him. They both go to his room and Satsuki reveals that she has also started playing Reunion and wants to patch things up with him. Haruto seems surprised and finally reveals that he even played it for a while today, and he tells her that he met Asahi over there. At first she takes it as a very bad joke and scolds him, but when he tells her the entire story, she tells him that she wants to see her personally and only then will she believe it, and Haruto finally agrees to play with her one more time. They log back into their accounts, and when they meet, Haruto is accompanied by Asahi, which totally shocks Satsuki. Asahi starts asking a bunch of questions about where they were this entire time and why the group disbanded. Satsuki, unable to control her emotions, bursts out, telling her that she was the reason why their group broke off because she died while trying to defend Haruto, which led to her death in real life as well. Haruto tells Satsuki to back off a little bit, but she tells Asahi that she still visits her grave every year, and she is scared that the reason why she can see her right now is just a bug, which will fade away sometime soon, leading to even more heartbreak for her. Suddenly, Haruto feels like something is off, and he swings his sword to swat away an arrow coming towards them. Suddenly, a bunch of men surrounded them yet again and demanded they hand over Asahi, but this time Satsuki walked up with her whip and released several different elements of magic all at once, which totally shocked the guys because even the excellent wizards could only use 2 or 3 elements, but Satsuki could use all of them, and that too at once. She is single-handedly able to deal with all of them at once and tells Haruto and Asahi to come back to their old base. They go back and take a deep dive in the lake of nostalgia as they see their things from 6 years ago that are untouched by time. While the girls looked around for more stuff, Haruto the emo boy ended up going down alone to the pond, where suddenly he sees a mysterious shadow coming towards him, which turns out to be a Pokemon-looking woman named Alicia. She tells Haruto that she can read his brain, but she is not here to hurt them. Instead, she tells him that a bunch of people are also behind Asahi, and they will lurk in the shadows till the time to strike is perfect. Haruto is dazed by what just happened and can't understand where that girl came from or where she went. He feels like he needs a break from all this bullcrap and decides to go back up for some rest when he hears Asahi and Satsuki talking heatedly. He hides behind the corner like an absolute snake and eavesdrops on the conversation, which is totally uncool. He overhears Satsuki telling Asahi to leave Haruto alone, as when she died 6 years ago, Haruto was hurt the most out of everyone in the group, even though he could not show it. He was shattered from the inside, and he stopped being himself, and nothing has been able to bring the old Haruto back. She tells Asahi that when she died 6 years ago, part of Haruto died with her and she doesn't want Haruto to get hurt again, as this time he might not be able to handle the pain. Asahi is extremely saddened by this, but before she could say anything, Haruto came in between them and told them to leave alone. He tells them that he is fine and also tells them very bluntly to leave him alone and care about themselves. Yet it simply logs off the game. The next day, Satsuki arrives again at Haruto's doorstep. Thirsty much? Haruto lets her in and she apologizes for the previous day and how she just wanted to protect him. She tells him that she cares extremely deeply for Asahi and the last thing she wants is for her to go away again. But she also cares for Haruto just as much and cannot see him in so much pain all the time. He thanks her for caring about him and she suddenly produces a ring from her pocket, which instantly tickles some memories in Haruto's brain. He remembers how they went to an arcade, and all of them bought a ring for themselves to depict their affiliation and bond with their group. She tells her that he needs her help, and they both run to the cemetery where Asahi was buried and Haruto, The giant grave robber starts digging her grave. He was lucky that he wasn't arrested and was able to get a ring out of her grave, as he remembered that on the last day, he and Asahi exchanged their rings and made a promise to protect each other. They come back and Haruto decides that no matter what, he is going to win the game, find a way to preserve Asahi, and figure out what the reason is for her appearance in this game. The next day, they log back into the game and Asahi convinces Haruto to help her with a quest to retrieve a very rare sap from a special tree inside the forest. They work together and try to bring down these trees one by one, who are not very strong monsters, and especially because of Asahi's skills to look into the future, they are easy to deal with. The problem, however, is that the drop rate of the item that Asahi is looking for is extremely low, and most of the trees did not drop any sap after getting killed. She decides to bait herself, and as she expected, a giant monster tree runs up to her and grabs her. Haruto is quick on his feet, rushes towards the tree, and chops off its hand. Asahi quickly takes aim and destroys the tree with a well-placed headshot, and to her total delight, the tree ends up dropping the sap that she so badly wanted. She falls into the lake below, but when Haruto descends down to check up on her, he is happy to see that she is completely fine and has gotten the sap. They return to the town, and Asahi takes him to a blacksmith's shop where she crafts the sap into a ring. I don't know how. Haruto is surprised to see that it is the same party ring that they got when they were young, and Asahi wants to make 3 of them so all 3 of them can start wearing them again like they used to do when they were young. She tries giving the ring to Haruto, but Haruto tells her to keep this one for herself and actually ends up putting the ring on her ring finger himself. This is seen by Satsuki, who gets jealous that Asahi is getting all the attention, so she quickly flies to the forest and after a while comes back with a sap and gets it converted into a ring, hoping that Haruto will also put a ring on her finger, but he doesn't, which is very funny and very sad. Satsuki, however, gets embarrassed as she is a tsundere and quickly puts the ring on herself. Haruto hatches a plan to find out what happened and to find out a way to get Asahi's memories back, so he was back to the dungeon where Asahi died and along with both the girls, enters it to try and defeat the boss, which somehow makes perfect sense to this dumbass. Last time when they were at their peak strength and their party had 6 members, they lost and one of them died, so obviously when half of their party is missing, they can somehow defeat the boss of this dungeon. They go inside the dungeons anyways and start traveling through the same routes, probably getting PTSD, but mental disorders are not real, just like my friends. They go through the dungeons and finally reach the point where they found the boss last time, but this time nothing happens. Suddenly, Asahi feels a presence, and they all turn around to see the Pokemon girl fading away into darkness once again, spewing some cryptic bullcrap that no one has the time to decode. From the same darkness, the monster emerges once again, in all its glory. That's what she said. They all get flashbacks of what happened the last time they were here, and they decide that it's too scary and try to run away. But the boss is in the mood to play and throws his swords towards the entrance, which blocks it completely. The boss throws a bunch of swords at them, but they all dodge, and this time Satsuki decides that she needs to man up and fight this idiot. She uses her most powerful magic, which combines the magic from all the different elements and stacks them up, firing a giant magical beam at the boss. But to everyone's dismay, the boss has a magical barrier and magic cannot penetrate that. The boss picks up his sword and brings it down towards Satsuki, who tries to dodge but fails and gets hit in the legs, getting stunned and being unable to move. Haruto the grave robber quickly runs towards her and tries to defend her, but the boss simply hits him like a fly in the air, and he too gets trapped below some fallen debris. The boss slowly starts moving towards the grave robber to finish him off, but Asahi is not satisfied by dying once to this monster, so she comes in front of him yet again and starts shooting at him with her puny gun. Haruto tells her to move aside, to not be a dumbass once again, and not to destroy his mental health by dying again, but once an idiot, always an idiot. She stays right in front of him and somehow shoots above the boss's head, making the ceiling collapse on him and buying some extra time. In the process, however, she gets hit and also gets stunned, unable to move her legs. The boss stands up once again, and Haruto curses himself for being so weak, probably also because he is a grave robber, and gets ready to admit defeat, but suddenly spots something shiny on the ground and finds a ring on the floor. He gets a boost of energy and he picks up the ring and wears it. The monster tries to attack Asahi, but Haruto quickly intercepts the attack and chops the monster's arm off. He then calls forth his spirit lion, which attacks the monster, injuring him severely, and then he uses his special ability by slashing in the air multiple times at once, which destroys the monster once and forever. Haruto and the others walk outside of the dungeon and seem to be really happy about their success today, but suddenly, Asahi starts feeling dizzy and collapses on the ground. Suddenly, all 3 of them see flashes of old memories that belong to Asahi, where she seems to be in a completely different place, being overlooked by people in lab coats. When the vision ends, Haruto asks what that was about, but Asahi has no idea because she doesn't have any memories about these occurrences. They go to the inn they are staying at, and as soon as they enter it, everyone turns towards them and starts gossiping about whether they are actually the revered group or imposters, and whether they defeated the dungeon monsters or not. Haruto decides to completely ignore them and leaves the other 2 girls into the room, where they sit down and relax for a bit. Asahi is still hell-bent on uniting the entire team together under one banner once again, but Haruto informs her that they don't even know whether Clive and Nozomi even play the game or not. Satsuki claims that she has a bunch of informants and they can help figure out where they are and whether they are still playing the game or not. The next day, they all set out to meet the informants and find out whether they have any information regarding the other 2 members. But on the way, they encounter a bunch of people running away, and when they ask them for the reason why they are running, they reply that the guild known as Southern Cross is seen nearby the area, and they don't want any problems with them, so they are running away. Haruto considers backing off as he doesn't want any troubles right now, as he already knows the Southern Cross from back in the day, as they were one of the guilds that wanted to steal Asahi away but never succeeded. Satsuki, however, tells him that the informants are only nearby and it shouldn't take much time, so Haruto agrees. They walk in a valley and suddenly Haruto stops as he senses that something is wrong, and sure enough, the leader of the Southern Cross emerges from behind a rock. Suddenly, they look around to see that they are completely surrounded by the guild members, who range in the thousands. The leader intercepted the informants and ended up luring the three of them here so he could take Asahi away. Haruto tells him to back off and Satsuki tries to take out her whip, but immediately a barrage of arrows land near Satsuki as a warning to stay still. The leader claims that there is no way for them to escape this, and the best thing they could do is peacefully hand over Asahi and return to where they came without any troubles. Haruto obviously refuses this and tells him to shove his offer where it belongs. Haruto tries to find a way to escape this predicament, but suddenly a bunch of men dressed in blue emerge from behind the members of the Southern Cross and take them hostage. The leader of the Brill Society shouts at the leader of the Southern Cross to back off as he has taken Haruto and the others into his temporary protection. The leader of the Southern Cross seems hesitant, but when he sees that they are outnumbered and outmaneuvered, he gives in and calls his troops back to withdraw for the moment. The leader of the Brill Society walks up to Haruto and asks them whether they are okay. Haruto tells him that they are fine and then immediately asks what his plans are and why he protected them. The leader of the Brill Society claims that the old leader used to hate Haruto and the others, but he doesn't at all because he has no reason to. He just came here to offer Haruto and the others the chance to join his guild so that they could provide protection to Asahi. According to him, Asahi is an element that shouldn't have been present in this game, but still she is, which makes the game operate on very unstable grounds, and any incident can break the balance and result in the collapse of the entire game, and he wants to prevent that from happening. Asahi, however, steps up and tells him that she isn't going to join anyone's guild as she has a guild of her own that will help her and protect her when needed. The leader looks at them and tells them that they are making a mistake, but he isn't going to force them as that might also mess up the balance of the game, and bids them adieu before calling his troops back and walking away. Haruto and the rest walk back to the inn, and both he and Satsuki log off. The next day, Haruto invites Satsuki on a kind of date because he wants to buy some new hardware for his computer, and Satsuki eagerly accepts the invitation. They go inside the mall and shop for stuff before they decide to go for lunch as well, which makes Satsuki extremely happy. Haruto, however, is dumber than an earthworm and keeps talking about Asahi the entire time, which makes Satsuki feel left out and puts off her mood completely, forcing her to leave. The next day, they both lodge in and Haruto meets both girls at the inn. They try to figure out what the visions that they had when they came out of the dungeon were and how they are connected to Asahi. She replies that she tries to remember often, but the last memory stuck in her head is her jumping in front of the beam to try and save Haruto. They try and brainstorm for quite some time, trying to find any way to bring her memories back, and finally Haruto has an idea. He asks Asahi about the place where for the first time her prophetic powers were used, and she replies that it was in the Tower of Heaven, pretty early on when they weren't very strong. Haruto tells them that they need to go there, and maybe it will help Asahi remember something. They all move towards the tower and enter it, where they end up facing some monsters here and there that they felt were very strong back in the day, but now they are nothing more than a nuisance for them. They again go down the nostalgia lane as they walk through areas that they have already visited before, and finally, after defeating every small monster, they enter the boss room. The boss turns out to be a giant robot, and Haruto remembers the time when they were facing him and felt that it was so powerful that no one could defeat it. Asahi starts shooting at the robot, destroying one of its arms, while Haruto runs forward to quickly cut down the other arm. Satsuki then uses her flame magic to completely burn the robot, which takes them to level 2, where the robot lets off a bunch of steam, making the visibility near zero. Haruto tells Satsuki to just use her light magic once again, but she suddenly gets caught and stunned by a rope emerging from the robot. She disappears in the steam, which scares Haruto, and he asks Asahi to use her flare rounds. Asahi shoots a flare shot, which lifts the steam up, and Haruto uses his special fury slashes to destroy the robot completely. They then proceed on top of the roof, and finally Asahi decides to use the teleportation crystal to get out of the area, but suddenly stops as she sees a mysterious red gem among her items. She takes it out and shows it to Haruto, who also doesn't know what it is, but suddenly, Taka teleports onto the rooftop alongside his guild members and snatches away the red gem. Asahi protests against him and tells him to return it, but Taka tells her that the gem doesn't pass the vibe check. He then turns towards Haruto and asks him if he's trying to kill Asahi, which is very stupid, to be honest, but whatever. Haruto obviously replies that no, he isn't, but I guess Taka just wants to fight, so he creates an isolation chamber and challenges Haruto to a duel. Taka rushes at Haruto and tries to punch him, but Haruto blocks his punch relatively easily. He tells Haruto that Asahi is real and that he loves Asahi. He is willing to stay inside this game world if that is what it takes to stay by her side. He becomes an even bigger emo boy by telling Haruto that the real world lost all its meaning for him the day Asahi died. The real world means nothing to him, but here in the world of reunion, where Asahi is still alive, he will make this his real world and never log out. Haruto understands how dumb his plans are and tells him that they should also consider the feelings of Asahi and not only their own. He tells him that if he wants to make her happy and get laid, he should recreate the guild with them. This triggers Taka, and he tries punching Haruto, and he tries to do the same, but before they could actually fight, the isolation sphere collapses. Satsuki was the one who broke the sphere with her magic. and even Asahi pointed a gun at Taka, telling him to get away from Haruto. Taka gets sad at this and backs off. Asahi calls him and asks him once again to join them and recreate the guild, as with his help, they can even find Clive and Nozomi, but he tells them that he has no idea about either of them, and that he is not going to join forces with Haruto ever. Taka and the other members of the Illuminati then back off and teleport away. Haruto and Satsuki also say their goodbyes for the day and log out. The next day, Haruto logs in earlier and goes with Asahi to different continents with the help of special teleporting places, so they can meet with the informants over there and ask for information on Clive and Nozomi. They travel through several continents and ask a lot of questions for information, but none of them seem to know much about anyone named Clive or Nozomi, as they are not registered on their continent. They then go to the edge of the forest and wait for Satsuki to come so they can continue their journey forward. They try finding more teleporters, but they are unable to, so they decide to walk towards the next continent, and the path goes through a forest that is covered in mist. At first, they seem to enjoy the beauty of the misty forest, but as the mist keeps growing thicker, they feel uneasy about the entire situation. Suddenly, Satsuki stops and tells them to get ready. She claims that there are more than 100 people waiting with their magic aimed at them. Haruto claims that he would have sensed their presence, but Satsuki replies that the mist is intertwined by a very strong magic, which is cloaking their presence entirely. Haruto draws his sword out, but before he can do anything, they all get separated. He finds himself surrounded by a bunch of people belonging to both the Brill and the Southern Cross guilds. He is very confused at this, but their leader, Litos, walks forward, informing him that the Southern Cross, the Brill family, and the Illuminati have joined forces together to take back Asahi from him. He gets angry at this and engages Litos in a duel. He runs towards him and with a single slash cuts Litos' shield into two, and he immediately realizes that he cannot win alone against Haruto. Haruto, however, keeps pushing on and tries to land another hit, but Litos dodges and kicks him back before telling the members around him to shoot at Haruto. Haruto runs towards Litos again and blocks the oncoming arrows when suddenly an arrow whizzes past him from behind and hits Litos on the shoulder, completely nullifying his magic. Haruto turns around and spots Alicia with a bow and an arrow. She tells them that her special ability is nullifying magic, and if her arrows hit anyone, it will seal their magical abilities. Litos shouts at his comrades to attack them, but Alicia shoots an arrow up in the air, which divides into hundreds of arrows and rains upon the hordes of enemies, sealing their magical abilities and making them useless. Taka has taken Asahi to an isolated location and told her that he cannot let Haruto be with her because he can't protect her. Asahi again tells him to recreate their own guild, but Taka refuses. Asahi also refuses to go with Taka, so he imprisons her inside a ball and releases gas, which knocks her out. He releases her from the capsule and starts walking towards her, but suddenly some members of his guild run up to Asahi and grab her. Taka gets mad at them and tells them to leave her this instant, but it turns out that they are imposters and not from his guild. They quickly surround Taka and subdue him, but the rest take Asahi and run away. Haruto and Satsuki go back to the inn, where an announcement is made by both the leaders of the Brill Society and the Southern Cross, claiming that they have joined their guilds together, making them the strongest guild in the game, both in terms of power and numbers. They also ended up betraying the Illuminati at the end and capturing Asahi for themselves. Now they have renamed their combined guild the Divine Guild. Haruto simply gets up and checks up on his equipment before telling Satsuki that he's going to save Asahi. Satsuki has some brains, so she tells him to think again, as the Divine Guild now has a combined force of more than 3,000 individuals, and he can never fight against them. She tells him to collaborate with Taka, but he refuses and tells her to stay back as most likely he will die. If he dies before saving Asahi, then she should join forces with Taka, as without Haruto in the picture, Taka won't mind helping Satsuki. He finally arrives at the battlefield and sees an entire army of people waiting for him as he stands there alone. He looks at the sky one last time, coming to terms with the fact that he is not going to come out of this alive, and runs towards their forces at full speed. Satsuki goes to Taka to talk to him, as this is the only possible way she could think of helping Haruto in any way possible. He agrees to talk to her, and when she asks him what he is doing to try and save Asahi, he replies that the combined strength of both the Brill family and the Southern Cross is too strong, and they have double the number of men that the Illuminati has. He tells her that he is planning meticulously and looking for an opportunity to strike, as he cannot take any chances in saving Asahi. Satsuki gets mad at him and tells him that Asahi being kidnapped was his fault in the first place. She screams at him that Haruto was always able to keep her safe, but the one time Haruto wasn't there to protect her, Taka wasn't able to do anything and let Asahi get kidnapped by the people he put his faith in. Taka seems taken aback but is not ready to accept his mistake. Satsuki looks at him and tells him that Haruto has gone alone to the battlefield to try and save Asahi. He tells her that if Haruto dies, he will never be able to access Reunion and will never be able to meet Asahi again, and Asahi doesn't exist in real life, so his entire attention will be focused on Satsuki, and similarly, Taka will stay in this world with Asahi, and he won't have to deal with Haruto constantly grabbing Asahi's attention. Meanwhile, Haruto has been destroying the enemy lines one after the other. The magic users on top of the fortress combine their strength and cast an incredibly strong explosion magic on top of Haruto, and he is unable to dodge it. The explosion creates a giant crater, and everyone thinks that Haruto has died, but to their surprise, as the dust clears, a shadow of a figure is seen, and it turns out that Haruto is still standing. He once again jumps forward and starts destroying the entire army alone. Before he could proceed, however, he was tied up by a bunch of magical chains that held him high above the ground, completely incapacitating him. The enemies laugh at him, and their commander orders them to finish Haruto off, while he is weak and incapacitated. But suddenly, a bunch of lightning arrows come towards the ground and break his chain. To his complete surprise, Taka lands in front of him and Satsuki follows him, and the three of them stand in the middle of the entire enemy army. Taka looks at Haruto and tells him to remember that he's here to save Asagi, not to save him. Haruto looks at him and nods in acknowledgement. Taka asks Haruto about the number of enemies still remaining, and he replies that around 1,500 enemies are still around, as he was only able to destroy half of the army alone. Taka and Haruto start working together in synergy, and by using their special abilities, they are soon able to destroy the remaining half of the armies. They beat the crap out of anyone that came in their way and ran towards the giant door to the fortress. They combine their forces again, and with a combined attack, blow the door to smithereens. They enter a giant hallway which leads to a stadium where they see a bunch of enemies alongside both Litos and Angelos, the leaders of the Brill family and the Southern Cross. Taka notices an unconscious Asahi in the arms of Angelus, and his blood starts boiling as he watches his girl in another guy's hand. He rushes at him with a powerful punch, but everyone dodges out of the way. Taka is shocked as his speed is so overwhelming that no one could possibly dodge it. Angelus quickly attacks Taka, but he immediately dodges and tries to land on the ground, but Angelus immediately creates spikes there, forcing him to jump again and again. Whenever he lands somewhere, he gets immediately attacked, even though he is teleporting around. Haruto is also very confused at this, but Satsuki tells him that Angelus is probably reading Asahi's brain, and as she can see the future, he's able to see the future once he forces his way into her brain. Suddenly, Taka gets bound by a red energy beam, which he is unable to break through, no matter how hard he tries. Angelus tells Litos to finish Taka off while he is bound, but as soon as he comes forward, Haruto attacks him. Litos, however, is able to dodge his attack and counters it, pushing him back. Haruto then uses an air slash, but Litos is able to block the attack, to his surprise. Satsuki tries to wake Asahi up by shouting her name, but Angelus tells her that it's of no use and creates magical ice spikes from the ground, which hit Satsuki and she fell down. Satsuki, however, decides that she has been saved enough times, and this time she won't be the damsel in distress. She unlocks her full potential and starts floating in the sky with an overwhelmingly powerful aura surrounding her. She summons all the elemental kings around her, tells them to provide her with all of their energies, and creates an insanely strong magical circle that suffers every bit of magical aura from the stadium and eliminates it alongside all the members of their clan. The magic nullifies and Taka is let loose, which scares Litos, and he asks Angelus about the new plan. Angelus looks at him and tells him not to worry, as they are going to use their emergency plan, and it will work no matter what. Litos looks at him with relief, but suddenly, Angelus creates a ball of dark energy and stabs Litos in the stomach, pushing the energy ball inside of him. Litos starts going out of control and gets overwhelmed with dark magic, going completely berserk. He rushes forward and smashes his sword on the ground, and a shockwave throws both Haruto and Taka away. Suddenly, Asahi also wakes up, which stops Angelus from being able to see the future. Suddenly, the rings worn by all of them start glowing and their hidden senses wake up from their slumber. All three of them decide to bet everything on one final attack and go all out on that. Satsuki uses her magical abilities to bend space, and Taka uses his magical abilities to bend time, while Haruto uses his ethereal swordsmanship to break through time and space and deliver a million slashes to the berserk Litos while he is unable to move, killing him in an instant. Satsuki runs up to Asahi, while Haruto stands in front of Angelus. Angelus tries to run away, but Taka is standing behind him, and he knocks him down with a straight, hard punch in the face, and Satsuki uses her flame magic to burn him to death. Asahi asks Taka to give her the red gem, as she wants to try and look through the visions again, as they are the only memories she has. Taka seems reluctant, but she promises him that she won't get unconscious, and finally Taka gives it to her. She holds it in her hands and focuses, which results in everyone getting flashes of her hazy memories, in which a bunch of people in white cloaks are discussing her abilities and how they can use her. Taka is extremely surprised by this and asks her what it is. Asahi replies that even though she doesn't know anything about it, she's going to find out what these memories are and how she can get them back. She then tries one final time to ask Taka to join their guild, but he refuses once again, telling her that he doesn't deserve her yet and that he needs to work more on himself before he can show her his face again. He then turns towards Haruto, tells him not to die before he has the chance to kill him, and leaves. That's it for this video. Make sure to like and subscribe for part 2, and watch